Okay, so I want you to just picture a scenario for a second. Let's say it's, I don't know, Tuesday morning. It's raining. You are standing on a crowded train, or maybe you are in your kitchen, staring at a sink full of dirty dishes. You've got your headphones in.
Right.
And you have this desire, this really specific kind of nagging desire to get better at English.
The classic downtime dilemma.
Yeah.
You have the time, but you definitely don't have the mental energy for a textbook.
Not at all. So logically, you do what we all do. You open your podcast app, you type in Learn English, you hit search, and then what happens?
Oh, panic.
Absolute, total paralysis.
It is the paradox of choice in its purest form. I actually did this just before we started today.
Did you really?
Yeah. And if you run that search right now, in 2026, you don't get 10 results. You don't even get 100. You get an ocean.
An ocean is a good word for it.
Millions of hours of content. And some of it is, incredible. High production audio from places like the BBC. And some of it is, well, let's just say it's a guy in his basement with a really bad microphone reading the dictionary.
And that right there is exactly why we're here today. We are doing something a little meta on this deep dive.
A little.
Usually we break down history or tech or psychology. Today we are breaking down the medium itself. We are doing a podcast about podcasts.
But more than that, we're building a kind of survival guide, a roadmap. We've taken this huge stack of sources, the absolute top-rated English learning audio from this year, and we've just audited everything.
And we're talking about the big ones.
Oh, yeah. The British Council, QLIPS, the BBC, and then these really interesting independent methodologies like the one from Speak Up English.
And the goal here isn't just to, give you a list of links. Anyone can do that. Our goal is to build a proper roadmap. We want to answer two fundamental questions. What should you be listening to, depending on your level? And maybe even more importantly, how should you be listening?
The how.
Because, and this really surprised me in the research, it turns out I have been listening to podcasts wrong my entire life.
I think most people have. There is such a profound difference between passive hearing, just, letting the sound wash over you, and what the experts in our source material call active investigation.
Active investigation.
And that is the core philosophy we're really digging into today. It comes mostly from the team at Speak Up English, but you see echoes of it everywhere. It's this idea of alchemizing your day.
Alchemizing your day. I love that.
Right. Taking that boring time, the commute, folding the laundry, and turning it into this high-intensity cognitive workout.
It sounds almost magical, but it's actually incredibly practical when you break it down. So let's do that. Let's open the toolkit. We have a lot on the table.
We really do. We've got what you might call the heavy hitters, the institutional giants.
Yeah.
The BBC's 6-minute English is a huge one, exactly what it sounds like. Short, punchy, news-driven. Then you have the British Council's elementary podcast. And this one is fascinating because it's structured almost like an old-timey radio drama, but completely modernized.
Right. And then you have the indie darlings. QLIPS is one. It focuses so heavily on that tricky conversational fluency, the stuff that makes you sound human.
The ums, the ahs, the idioms.
Exactly. And then there's Coffee Break English, which is for the people who really want to slow the world down and just dissect the grammar piece by piece.
And we've also got the real energy boosters, like All Ears English. I love their motto, connection, not perfection.
A great motto. But before we get into the individual shows, we have to start with the foundation, with the method. Because you can have the best content in the world, but if you're just letting it play in the background while you scroll through social media, it's not going to stick, is it?
It might help your ear a tiny bit, subconsciously. But you are not going to see that huge leap in fluency. You need a framework. You need a system.
So let's dig into the why first. I mean, we have textbooks, we have language apps with owls threatening our families if we miss a lesson.
Right.
We have grammar drills. So why is audio specifically, podcast audio, considered such a killer app for language learning? Is it really just about convenience?
Convenience is a massive factor, and we'll definitely get to that. But the primary driver is actually biological. It's all about how our brains process something called prosody.
Prosody. Okay, that's a linguistics term. Break that down for us.
Prosody is, simply put, the music of a language.
Yeah.
It's the rhythm. It's the stress on certain syllables, the intonation. When you open a textbook and you read, "Hello, how are you? I am fine," your internal voice reads that in a very flat way.
Robotic. I am fine.
Exactly. Each word gets equal weight.
Yeah.
But that's not how humans speak. We speak in sound bursts. We link words together. We actually swallow entire sounds. Linguists call this connected speech.
Okay.
So if I ask you, what are you doing in a textbook, that is 4 distinct words. But in a podcast or, in real life, how does it sound?
It sounds like what you doing.
What you doing. One single sound unit. And if your brain has only ever seen the text, it literally cannot decode that sound. It hears what you doing, and it's searching its database for one word, not four.
It creates a cognitive mismatch.
A huge one. And podcasts are the bridge over that gap. They expose you to the messy, the rhythmic, the beautifully imperfect reality of how English is actually spoken. You're not just learning the dictionary definition of a word, you're learning how that word lives inside a real sentence.
So it's the difference between looking at a clean, neat map of a city and actually walking down its noisy, chaotic streets.
That is a fantastic way to put it. You are learning the actual terrain. And the second big part of the why, which comes from that Speak Up English source, is this idea of habit stacking.
Okay, so this is the convenience argument.
It is, but it's a bit deeper than just saving time. It's really about lowering the barrier to entry for studying.
The friction.
The friction, exactly. If you tell yourself, okay, I need to study English for 1 hour, you have to, clear your desk, find your book, get a pen, sit down. The friction is so high.
And half the time you just don't do it. You put it off, you say, I'll do it on the weekend, and then the weekend comes and you just watch movies.
We all do it, but podcasts, they attach themselves to existing behaviors. You were already washing the dishes. You were already driving to work. You're already on the bus. By stacking the learning on top of that pre-existing habit, you bypass your brain's natural resistance to starting a new task. It stops feeling like study time, and it just starts feeling like part of your lifestyle.
Okay, so we're sold on the medium. We get why it works. But this brings us back to that Speak Up English masterclass. They outline a very specific 3-step method for how to consume this stuff. And I have to be honest, when I read step 1, I felt a little spike of anxiety on behalf of the listeners.
The no pause rule.
The no pause rule.
Yeah.
Walk us through step 1, the main idea. Listen.
So step 1 is all about training your brain to tolerate ambiguity. The instructions are very clear. You play the episode, you do not look at the transcript, you do not pause the audio.
At all.
Not once.
Yeah.
And you do not touch a dictionary.
That sounds like an absolute nightmare for a perfectionist. You miss one word, you get stuck thinking about that word, and meanwhile the audio has just kept going and now you're completely lost.
And that is precisely the panic response they are trying to deprogram. See, when we learned in school environment, we're taught that 100% comprehension is the will. If you don't know a word, you stop, you raise your hand.
Right.
But in the real world, in a business meeting or just talking to someone at a bar, you can't pause the other person. You have to learn to keep swimming, even if you're in slightly deep water.
So step 1 is basically an immersion simulation.
That's it. And the goal isn't to understand every single word. The goal is just to answer the big binary questions. If the host is telling a story about their weekend trip, all you need to figure out is, was it a good trip or a bad trip? Did they go to the beach or did they go to the mountains?
You're just listening for the gist, the general vibe.
Exactly. You're listening for what they call anchors. Those are the words you do know. And you use them to kind of triangulate the meaning of the words you don't know. It's active problem solving.
Okay, so you've survived step 1. You have a vague idea that they went to the beach and maybe it rained. Now, presumably we get to use some tools.
Now you get the life raft. Step 2 is called active investigation. And this is where the transcript becomes, as they put it, the learner's best friend.
So now we're reading and listening at the same time.
Yes, and this engages a different part of your brain. It's called multimodal processing. You're connecting the sound you hear, the audio, with the symbol you see, the text. And this is where you are allowed to pause. You hit a word you don't know, and you stop.
And you finally grab the dictionary.
Wait, not yet.
Man, these rules are strict.
They are, but there's a good reason. Speak Up English has this context-first rule. Before you look up the word, you have to look at the sentence it's in. Look at the situation. You have to try and guess what it means first.
But why does guessing matter? I'm going to look it up anyway. Why waste the 10 seconds?
Because the act of guessing creates what's called a knowledge gap in your brain. It primes the neural pathway for the new information.
Oh, interesting.
If you just look it up immediately, it's easy come, easy go. In one ear, out the other. But if you struggle with it, even for just 10 seconds, if you form a little hypothesis, then when you do find the answer, it sticks.
It's the difference between being given a fish and actually learning how to fish.
That's exactly it. It's about cognitive effort. And sadly, the more it hurts, the more you learn. And then comes the next part, documentation. the vocabulary notebook.
Okay, I found this part really interesting because I am definitely guilty of doing this wrong. I usually just write down the word and then the definition. Convenient, easy to use.
And that is the trap. Because words don't live in a vacuum. They have what are called collocations, other words that they naturally like to hang out with. If you just write down convenient, you might try to use it in a sentence in a way that just sounds weird to a native speaker.
So what's the advice?
You write down the entire sentence.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. So instead of just writing the word, you would write, listening to podcasts is convenient because you can do it anywhere.
Right. Now I've got the grammar, I've got the because, I've got the context.
Everything. And they even suggest, if you're a visual learner, to add a little drawing next to it.
Stick figures are allowed.
Highly encourage whatever makes it memorable for you. If you draw a little stick figure listening to headphones while doing the dishes, you will remember the meaning of convenient much faster than if you just wrote the definition.
Okay, so we have listened for the gist. We have dissected the text with the transcript. Now comes step 3. And this is the one that, if you do it on the bus, is going to get you some very strange looks from your fellow passengers.
Step 3 is shadowing. And yes, it is probably best performed in private, or at least in a very loud environment where no one can hear you.
It sounds like spycraft. Shadowing, what is it?
It's actually more like a gym workout for your mouth. The focus shifts completely away from meaning and onto the mechanics of speech.
Okay.
You play a sentence, you pause the audio, and then you repeat it. But you don't just say the words, you have to mimic the performance.
So if the speaker sounds excited, I need to sound excited.
If they sound excited, you sound excited. If their pitch goes up at the end of the sentence, your pitch goes up. If they pause or hesitate for a second, you pause and hesitate. You're trying to wear their voice like a mask.
What's the point of that? Is it just acting?
It's muscle memory. Speaking a new language is a physical act.
Yeah.
Your tongue, your lips, your jaw, they all have to move in ways they aren't used to moving.
Right. English has sounds like the T8 or the R that don't even exist in a lot of other languages.
Exactly. And shadowing bridges that gap between knowing how a word is supposed to sound and being physically able to produce that sound correctly.
It's like learning an instrument. You can't just read the sheet music and expect to play the piano. You actually have to put your fingers on the keys.
That's the perfect analogy. And it forces you to speak at a native speed, which helps break that terrible habit of translating everything in your head. You don't have time to translate, you just have to flow.
So that's the method, the speak up framework. Just investigation shadowing. Now that we have the operating system, let's start installing some software. Let's talk about the actual podcasts, starting with what I call the quick fixes.
The short form content?
Exactly. The stuff you can fit in while you're waiting for the kettle to boil. And the undisputed king of this particular space seems to be the BBC.
BBC Learning English, for sure. And specifically their show, 6 Minute English. It is an absolute juggernaut.
And the format is right there in the name, 6 minutes.
Which is psychologically brilliant, isn't it? It's such a low commitment. You can't really say, oh, I don't have time for 6 minutes. But what really sets the BBC apart, especially now in 2026, is their editorial mix. The topics are just so eclectic.
I was looking through their recent episode list before this, and it is wild. I mean, they have your standard grammar episodes, but then they have an episode literally titled, Why Are Billionaires Building Bunkers?
Which is such a great hook. They're talking about doomsday prepping and, societal collapse, but they're doing it with simpler vocabulary. It's genius.
I listened to that one. They have the hosts, Neil and Hannah, discussing whether these tech moguls know something that the rest of us don't, and they sneak in these fantastic words. They use the term bolt hole.
Bolt hole, a great one. A place where you can hide or escape to.
And apocalyptic.
Right, and then the very next week, they'll pivot to something completely different, like rethinking dyslexia.
That was the one about dyslexic spies, right?
Yes. The British Intelligence Agency, GCHQ, actively recruits people with dyslexia because they process information differently. They see patterns that, neurotypical people might miss.
And then the next one is about artistic swimming,
which used to be called synchronized swimming.
The takeaway for me with the BBC is that they are masters of the spoonful of sugar approach. They hook you with a topic you genuinely want to read about in a magazine, billionaires, spies, sports, and then they hide the vegetables, the vocabulary lesson, inside the mashed potatoes.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And it prevents what I call the vocabulary silo. If you only learn from textbooks, you tend to learn classroom words.
Yeah.
But with the BBC, One week you're learning finance terms, the next week you're learning psychology terms, the next week it's sports. It builds this very broad, very resilient vocabulary base.
Now, if the BBC is all about variety and these broad strokes, our next source, Coffee Break English, feels almost like the complete opposite. It's all about precision,